Welcome and bienvenidos. I see that we have 64 people on the call, and so I'm very excited about that number of people joining us this morning. Buenos días y bienvenidos. Quiero agradecerles por estar con nosotros ahora. Tenemos 64 personas en la llamada ahorita y estamos ahorita tratando de arreglar para que en un punto nos podamos todos ver. Pero quiero a pasar a la comunicación a Hannah, que va a explicar. Tenemos al señor Oscar Ríos con nosotros y va a explicar cómo le hacemos para traducir.
Gracias, María Elena, y buenos días a todos y todas. Yo me llamo Hannah Rogers y trabajo para el Consejo de Acción Comunitario. Y bueno, esta mañana, si usted va a querer escuchar la conversación en español, por favor, si puede ubicar donde dice el chat, si usted puede escribir nomás español en el chat, eso nos va a indicar, bueno, que usted puede identificarse para que podamos ponerle con la interpretación. Y si usted sí quiere escuchar la conversación en español, les voy a enseñar cómo pueden empezar la interpretación. Puede localizar, perdón. ¿Pueden ver lo que está en la pantalla?
Sí.
Sí, ándale. Bueno, si ustedes quieren escuchar en español, pueden localizarse el icono de interpretación que está en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Va a haber un icono que es como un globo y dice Interpretation. Y si usted quiere seleccionar Spanish, o sea, español, y puede decir Mute Original Audio, o sea, apague el audio original para que usted ya va escuchando nomás lo que está diciendo Oscar como en su papel de intérprete. Si hay algunas preguntas sobre este proceso, siempre nos puede enviar un mensaje por el chat y vamos a tener espacio al final de la agenda para hablar como comunidad más. Si hay otras preguntas, pueden decirle en el chat. Gracias.
Gracias, Hannah. Quiero dar otra vez. I'm sorry. Switch back over. I want to give you the warmest welcome for joining us today. You know, this conversation is so incredibly important. I want to welcome. I'm Maria Elena de la Garza. I'm the executive director to the Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County, and CAB has been providing support to the community for over 55 years. This is our 55th birthday. This year is our 55th birthday, and so I'm very excited that this movement, the movement of Thriving Immigrants, is happening during this very important time in community action history. You know, today is an important morning in that we have some some guests who will help us understand how we as a community and as a county can elevate, support, and advance the work for our farm worker community. Hannah, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. And so it's really an honor to have each and every one of you here. I'm looking at the screen numbers. We have approximately 82 participants. And I want to talk a little bit about why this work is so incredibly important. You know, Thriving Immigrants, you know, CAB has offered immigration services for over 30 years under the direction of our wonderful attorney, Doug Keegan. In our recent history, we've continued to offer services, and we've also augmented our work to help support immigrants in our community. And many of you have heard me share the story that where Thriving Immigrants was born. It was born at City Council chambers at the city of Watsonville. when we were advocating for Sanctuary City. And we were at the podium, and many of our electeds who are here today might remember. And we said, yes, of course we have to be a sanctuary city. How can we not be? And we have to go beyond that. And we have to think about how can we help immigrants thrive in our community. And so bring us together and bring the voices together to help us think about how do we ensure that every single immigrant in the city of Watsonville and in the county of Santa Cruz is welcomed, has access to services, and that systems are responsive to their needs. And so that's how this conversation got launched. I want to say maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And we have continued to grow and gain momentum. And so with that, I want to say the importance of the alignment of what's happening in our community right now. We know and we support the Black Lives Matter movement, and there's intersectionality between that movement and the pro-immigration movement. We move one and the other one needs to move with it. And that's the beauty of the strength of these conversations, because we move together in finding solutions and creating space. One, to hold conversations that will create systems change. Two, to hold conversations that will connect people who are aligned in values and vision to help create and impact the systems that may not be as responsive, that we know are not as responsive as they need to be. So I want to acknowledge the elected officials who are with us today, and those of you who have been part of this movement. I know, and our CAB board members. I'm not seeing who is on this call, so forgive me if I do not call your name, but I'd like to recognize our Mayor, Rebecca Garcia, our City Council folks, Francisco Estrada, Aurelio Gonzalez, who also sits on the CAB board, Lowell Hurst, who sits on the CAB Finance Committee, our Mayor, Kristen Peterson from Capitola, and I hope our Mayor, Justin Cummings, is here from City of Santa Cruz. So if I missed you, please forgive me. I will hope to acknowledge you as the event goes on. And I want to take this moment. I have the honor to give you a little intro to who our speakers, who our guests are today. We are thrilled to be working with Assemblyman Rivas, who is with us today, and his staff. Who is going to talk to us a little bit about his Farmworker Relief Package. Assemblyman Rivas is absolutely the man we need in his position right now. With his experience growing up in farm worker housing, being from our region, our San Benito area. I love his bio where it calls out that he learned the importance of service to the community from his grandfather. That is exactly the kind of values, experience, and passion that we need to help move this advocacy forward, to help support our farm worker community. We also have with us today our Ag Commissioner Juan Hidalgo, who was appointed in 2015. He holds a bachelor degree from UC Davis and has worked in Santa Cruz County since 2004, including serving as a Deputy Ag Commissioner since 2012. There's an alignment of values and passion. He believes in the importance of this work and wants to protect agriculture, the environment, and the safety and welfare of county residents, including in highlighting and elevating the work for our farm worker community. So with that, I want to thank Assemblyman Rivas, and I want to thank Commissioner Hidalgo for being with us today, along with now 90 of you who decided that this conversation was important enough to join in. So I want to thank you for being here. Si se puede, change can happen, and change happens because of these kinds of conversations. With that, I will pass it along to Hannah.
Gracias, Maria Elena. Thank you so much. Assemblymember Rivas will be joining us shortly, so I will take this moment to go over the agenda for today. Again, my name is Hannah Rogers. I work for Community Action Board and help to organize the Thriving Immigrants Collaborative. Today we'll give a brief introduction of who our Thriving Immigrants Collaborative is and the steps we've taken to date. We will allow some time for Assemblymember Robert Rivas to tell us a little bit about the California Farmworker COVID-19 Relief Package, what its anticipated impact might be on the community and what the current status is. We will hear, as Maria Elena mentioned, from Juan Hidalgo, who is our Santa Cruz County Agricultural Commissioner, to provide some input about just from the lens that the very unique perspective that he holds in this county. We wanted to hear from him about further ways for us to support farm workers. We will have a brief moment for any kind of clarification questions that you might have for Assemblymember Rivas regarding this legislation. We'll take a pause to allow for us to go to the bathroom if we need, and then we will hear from Assemblymember Rivas how it is exactly that the Central Coast can support this California Farmworker COVID Relief Package, which is moving through our state government quite quickly at the moment. We'll have some time at the end for community input, questions, and commitments where we will break up into breakout sessions, hopefully give some people more of a chance for their voices to be heard. And then we'll, of course, close with some next steps for you all to keep this advocacy work going. Thank you again for being here with us. I want to remind everyone that this is being recorded. We will send out, publicize the recording afterwards and send out the slides. Para los que Oh, Oscar's interpreting. Thank you. I wanted to take a moment to just give a brief introduction of who is TIC. We've been having these community conversations this summer. Clearly 90 of you know about who we are and are interested enough to get involved. Thank you so much for being here this morning. The Thriving Immigrants Collaborative is a collective of service providers who are mostly in our steering committee is focused in South County at the moment, but we are an alliance of organizations that provide direct services and advocate for the immigrant community. We are hoping our mission is to enhance the quality of life and advance the rights of our immigrant community through advocacy, organizing, and the alignment of services. And through all that we do in TIC, we really hope to espouse the core values of dignity, justice, and equity, both in our work and what it is that we hope to create in this community together. We aim to shape our collective response to the needs of the local community through our vision that we hold of a united, thriving, and equitable community built on our diversity and shared history of migration. I wanted to share a little bit. Maria Elena mentioned that Thriving Immigrants was born out of a Watsonville City Council meeting shortly after the most recent federal administration took office, where it became clear that we were going to need to organize our community to support the immigrants' rights movement locally as things began to shift. Once we solidified our steering committee, which is made of Community Bridges, Monarch Services, CIMA, Center for Information, Migrant Assistance, Salud para la Gente, Catholic Charities, Diocese of Monterey, Pajaro Valley Prevention and Student Assistance, Pajaro Valley Rapid Response, Watsonville Law Center, and is led by Community Action Board. Once we were able to solidify our steering committee, we cultivated a shared leadership model throughout 2018, 2019. As before we embarked on drafting our 2-year strategic plan, we decided that we needed to make sure that we grounded our work in the community, in the needs of the community and the input. So we created an environmental scan report, which our environmental scan report allowed us to do focus groups in the community with immigrants, as well as community partner surveys, which allowed us to find out a little bit more information about what the current status of our immigrant community is. On that, we based our 2-year strategic plan. We were able to, as I mentioned, create our vision, mission, core values, strategic priorities, and the goals of what we wanted to work on this upcoming 2 years. In February, we were able to to introduce our first event as a collaborative, which was Santa Cruz County's first immigration conference. It had 7 different breakout sessions, over 200 attendees, and really the intent was to elevate the conversation around immigrants' rights in this county, as well as to help the community help inform us how it is that we want to draft the remaining objectives in our strategic plan. This conference allowed us to expand community support and participation in TIC. And as a follow-up to this conference in February, we've been hosting community conversations on immigrant advocacy, as well as providing community resources. We hope to continue these conversations, both around advocacy, community resources, and other topics in the future. We look very much forward to you all joining us. Bueno.
Thank you, Hannah. If I can jump in, I see that Assemblyman Rivas has joined us. And
yes,
I want to welcome Assemblyman Rivas to the conversation. Assemblyman Rivas, we are so excited to have you here and not only learn from you regarding how we can support your work, also have you learn from us in terms of who we are as the Thriving Immigrants Collaborative and the force that exists in our county to help elevate the work. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Paz, I believe. Is that correct, Hannah? Who will be initiating the next part of the conversation.
Thank you. We're actually going to be hearing first from Edgar Landeros from Community Bridges, who will be explaining just briefly our TIC advocacy priorities that were generated out of these conversations in February and on TIC these past few months. Edgar, are you with us this morning?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Hannah, for that introduction. Yeah, so this past February at the convening, one of the things that came up was health and workplace safety. As Santa Cruz County continues to navigate how to keep our community safe through the changing realities of the global health crisis, TIC seeks to support the immigrant community with their most pressing needs by focusing first on health and workplace safety. Health and workplace safety priority idea number 1 was to increase and coordinate COVID health and safety messaging for work and home intended to reach the immigrant community, including coordinate with community leaders, including county, public, and health, to increase South County focused COVID safety messaging. In addition, work with agriculture growers to ensure the most up-to-date community-facing COVID safety and community resources information and making sure that it reaches all agricultural workers. Furthermore, health and workplace safety priority idea number 2 was to state advocacy for health for all through SB 29 and AB 4, which is trying to provide health coverage for all undocumented people. And then the second priority was financial resources for undocumented people. We are grateful that California state leaders took an important step to support immigrants in California by offering disaster relief assistance funds to undocumented individuals. And our community has seen firsthand how much greater the need is compared to the resources that are currently available. Because TIC's lead agency, CAB, has been distributing these funds for 4 counties on the Central Coast and has witnessed an overwhelming number of callers seeking funding since the program started, the solution needs to lie both in local funding and supporting initiatives that set precedents at the state level. Thus, through TIC, we are supporting 1, financial resource priority, state advocacy through Cal EITC to allow undocumented I-10 tax filers the chance to receive the Cal EITC tax credit, which has proven to keep families afloat in poverty. And then 2, financial resources, county-funded emergency relief assistance for undocumented people. So through these, we would be able to assist families staying more afloat during these hard times. I will now pass it on to my TIC steering committee member, Paz Padilla, who will introduce our third priority.
Thank you, Edgar. Buenos dias. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see all of you here and listening to our conversación. It is a pleasure to be here and being able to advocate for our community, especially our farm workers and our undocumented. As a housing steering committee for TIC, as you all know, housing is an ongoing and it's a vital issue on the Central Coast. With the high cost of living and not enough affordable housing, our farm workers and others who work in the industries or hospitalities don't get paid enough to meet the extreme height of cost here in the Central Coast. We can address the housing crisis in a region from many ways, many important and needed ways, but TIC has identified as a community need and focus on this one idea. We have identified to increase housing safety and renters protection through Know Your Rights messaging campaign on tenants' rights, including undocumented people, and through homeowners education on responsibilities and best practices to keep tenants safe. For a good reason, there is often more of a focus on educating our tenants about the rights. However, in our interaction with landlords, especially throughout this 3 months and through the expiration of local and state evictions moratorium, we have also seen a lack of knowledge of homeowners' responsibilities, both on the rights and responsibilities in our messaging accounts, lack of knowledge of homeowners' responsibility accounts for some of the violations of rights against tenants across the county. TIC has focused and will continue to advocate for immigrants' improved health, financial resources, and housing rights on the Central Coast. We ask our Assemblymember Robert Rivas to tell us how we can support farm workers, especially during this time. Assembly Rivas, it's we want to welcome you here so we can hear from you. I know there's been some talks through California to work with our farm workers. So here's my question to you. Can you tell us about the Farmworkers COVID Relief Package? What does it propose and what impact do you anticipate it will have on the farm working community?
Yes, so I really want to thank everybody for making the time. I appreciate the invitation to join you all. I appreciate I jumped on a little bit late. I just arrived at our state capitol, having made the drive from the district, from Hollister. But you know, I really appreciate the work that you guys do. You know, in a district here, the 30th Assembly District, that this is a district I've lived in my whole life, and as many of you know, I feel very passionate about our district, about the issues around agriculture, about the issues around farm working families, because I come from a farm working family, because I grew up in farm worker housing, and had it not been for that, you know, small little 2-bedroom unit that myself and 9 other members of my family lived in, you know, that housing, that security we had, I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have now, and that I have had, and that so many families in our region, you know, have it much more difficult than I had it. And we certainly have to do something about it. And so certainly having championed a farm worker housing bill last year, you know, it didn't take the president, it did take our governor to say that farm workers were essential. You know, I saw the work that my grandfather did, the man who raised me, every single day, went to work sick, healthy. He would work 14-hour days. He would, you know, we lived in a farm worker housing unit that was in the same fields where he reported to work every day. And so I knew the work he did was essential, because right behind me, and actually in my office, I have his pay stub from the late 1980s, where it shows on that pay stub. There's a pay stub from 1987. He was making $6.33 an hour. Now it's in the late 80s, and he supported our entire family on his wage. My grandmother was a seasonal worker at a cannery, San Benito Foods in downtown Hollister. But I have that pay stub on my wall to show my colleagues when we have meetings, or to show people when they come in, that paycheck right there was essential to the survival for our family. And that was after 30 years of him being on the job. $6 and $6 an hour isn't much, but how I've approached this job, and how I approach, and why I have introduced this Farmworker Relief Package really is because we have a terrible habit in all my time in public service. We have a terrible habit in government, at any level of government, of being reactive to problems. And so certainly what I've been taught in my time in public service as a county supervisor for 8 years is doing our best to try to be proactive to solving problems. And we are learning right before us now, this COVID-19 pandemic, how we're very slow to react at the federal level. The support has been dramatically inadequate. We are witnessing the slow reaction to respond to this pandemic, how people have made it a political public health crisis, which is anything but. But now we are seeing a resurgence of this public health crisis in our communities and in our state. And from day one, at the onset of this pandemic, I sought to just apply the values that were instilled in me by my grandfather, who certainly taught me that you don't just sit around to make change happen. As a farm worker his entire life, he was incredibly proactive. He got his voice with the United Farm Workers of America, working with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. And he worked very hard. He sacrificed, he fought for better working conditions, better wages, and health benefits. And so certainly understanding the impact that this public health crisis, that the coronavirus is going to have, not only on our communities, but our farm working communities, our most vulnerable population of people, not only in the district I represent, but farm workers are the most vulnerable population in California and in this country. I say that because this housing crisis that we're experiencing in California, those that are impacted the most are our farm working families. And so this crisis, this public health crisis, is only exacerbating these issues for our farm workers and for our district and for our communities. And so certainly what our Farm Worker Relief Package does is it seeks to do the best we can to proactively solve this problem. And I have been very vocal. I have advanced in any number of ideas to legislative leadership, to our governor, Mr. Newsom, talking about how COVID-19 is impacting our farm workers. We sent out letters in March, April, and we have been incredibly persistent asking for an expansion of Project Room Key through a budget request. If we're going to rapidly rehouse our homeless population, which is needed, but then the governor rolls out programs to provide temporary housing for nurses and doctors, frontline healthcare workers, nothing is being done for our farm working community. We have seen in other states, in North Dakota, how workers at meat processing plants have completely been infected, have completely shut down those operations. And the last thing we need is a threat to our food security, our food supply, which is made possible through the hard work of our farm workers. And so as I've mentioned to my colleagues, as I've mentioned to the governor, as I've mentioned to legislative leadership here in Sacramento, farm workers are a very vulnerable population of people because they can't adhere to the basic guidelines by CDC. We take advantage of our opportunities to social distance, to shelter in place. Farm workers can't do that. They can't do that on the job, and they can't do that off the job, which we all know. They work in close proximity. They work with all of the same tools. They travel to and from job sites in close proximity on crowded buses. And then when they go home, they live in critically overcrowded conditions. We have all the data that shows that. In the Salinas Valley, the Pajaro Valley, and San Benito, it is a third world. We have farm working families living in third world country conditions. It is a humanitarian crisis, and we need to do more as a state. And so certainly what our package of bills does, really the highlight of the bills is Assembly Bill 2043, which is the Agricultural Employee COVID-19 Health and Safety Act, which simply asks that the state codify a set of guidelines and safety standards for our workers, that we do everything we can to protect frontline farm workers, these essential workers, because although some counties are being proactive, like the County of Monterey has set up guidelines and workplace safety rules. Other counties have not. And so it shouldn't, we have a patchwork where some counties are doing good things and some counties aren't. We need a statewide standard that's going to help drive this standard of safety during our pandemic, during future emergencies, to a better and a more efficient standard. And then also with that is enforcement, is looking for ways. We've been working with industry to see how we can effectively legislate a means to enforce if these standards aren't being practiced on the job. And so certainly other parts of our package are really, highlighting the importance of expanding telehealth opportunity in rural communities for our farm workers, expanding, e-filing opportunities in our court system. You have a lot of rural areas that you have to drive long distances to pay a simple court fine. We're trying to do, everything possible to enable that all courts in the state have the opportunity to offer e-filing services. And other parts of our package, let's see here. I know I've been rambling for a while, and I apologize, but those really are our three, bills. And then obviously our budget request to expand Project Room Key, a $25 million request to expand that program and have it extend to agricultural communities, farm workers, so we could rapidly rehouse farm working families that live in critically overcrowded conditions. So with that, the city of Watsonville has been fantastic. Of all parts of the district, the city of Watsonville has been incredibly proactive in holding, farm worker relief drives. I know we had planned our first farm worker relief drive in Watsonville. It was the only relief drive we had planned, and we had such an overwhelming response that we have ended up having, I think, 2 or 3 or 4 other relief drives. We have our last relief drive in the district this weekend in Gilroy on Saturday. But the community of Watsonville certainly has been incredibly proactive. The city manager, Matt, and the council have been, very supportive when it comes to farm worker issues. And, the best way to help us is, by ensuring that you continue your advocacy locally for our farm working families. Any letters of support we can get for this legislation is very important. But at the end of the day, this is much more than just a couple of bills. This is, certainly starting and trying to light a fire under doing a lot more to provide not only aid, but a lot more structure and support in not only our district, but throughout the state for our farm working families. And so certainly appreciate having this conversation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Very informative. Thank you. Hannah?
Yeah, thank you so much, Assemblymember Rivas, for giving us an overview of that and also some of the inspiration for your work. It's great to hear some of your backstory there. Right now, we will pause for